The village of Zamora was once a place of abundance and joy. Its people thrived on fertile lands, and the river that flowed through the village provided water for farming, drinking, and daily life. Laughter filled the air. Children played in the fields, and the elders spoke of a time when the gods smiled upon them. But all of that changed. One by one, the crops began to wither. The once green farmlands turned brown and cracked under the scorching sun. The river, which had always been a source of life, grew shallow, and soon the water dried up completely. The villagers dug deeper wells, hoping to find water, but their efforts were in vain. The animals in the nearby forests grew restless, wandering closer to human settlements, as if searching for something unseen. At night, the wind howled through the village, carrying whispers that sent chills down the spines of even the bravest hunters. Fear spread like wildfire. The elders, wise and respected, gathered in the central square to discuss what could be causing these misfortunes. Some believed that an angry spirit had been awakened, while others feared that the gods had turned their backs on the village. The people prayed, offering gifts at the shrine of the ancestors, but no answers came. Each passing day brought new troubles. Families went hungry, and sickness crept into homes. Despite their fears, no one could explain why their once prosperous village was now suffering. Whispers of a curse spread among the villagers, but the source of this darkness remained unknown. In the midst of this turmoil, few realized that the answer to their troubles lay not in the heavens, but within their own village, hidden in plain sight in the life of a young girl named Ayo. Ayo was a girl of 17, kind-hearted and full of grace. She had smooth brown skin that glowed under the sun, deep, curious eyes that held a quiet sadness, and long, thick braids that she tied back as she worked. Though she was beautiful, it was her gentle spirit that made her truly special. But despite her kindness, her life was anything but easy. She lived with her stepmother, Mama Folake, and her stepsister, Kemi, in a small mud house at the edge of the village. Mama Folake was a strong woman, feared by many for her sharp tongue and stern ways. She treated Ayo like a servant, forcing her to wake before dawn to cook, fetch water, and clean the house, while Kemi, her own daughter, did nothing but laugh and play with her friends. Ayo was not Mama Folake's real daughter. She had been found as a baby, wrapped in a cloth, lying at the roots of the sacred baobab tree. The elders had searched for her parents, but no one came forward. Some believed she was abandoned, while others whispered that she was a child of the gods, left in the village for a reason unknown. Mama Folake had taken her in, but not out of kindness. Over the years, she made sure Ayo never felt like she belonged. While Kemi wore fine clothes and ate the best food, Ayo wore old, patched-up dresses and ate whatever was left. If she ever made a mistake, even a small one, Mama Folake would scold her harshly or send her to bed without food. But no matter how unfair life was, Ayo never complained. She found happiness in small things: the warmth of the morning sun, the laughter of children in the village, and the way the wind whispered through the trees. Though Kemi had been raised to look down on Ayo, she did not share her mother's cruelty. At times, she even felt sorry for her stepsister. But Mama Folake's words were powerful, and Kemi had been told all her life that Ayo was beneath them. And so, Ayo lived her days in quiet endurance, never knowing that her life was about to change forever, and that the truth about her past was a secret even her stepmother feared. Mama Folake carried a secret that no one in the village knew, a secret so dangerous that if it ever came to light, it would destroy everything she had built. She was not Ayo's savior, nor had she taken the girl in out of kindness. The truth was far darker. Mama Folake had stolen Ayo as a baby, knowing that the child was special, knowing that if she ever discovered who she truly was, it would mean the end of her own power. Many years ago, Mama Folake had been nothing more than a simple palace maid in a kingdom that no longer existed. She had spent her life serving the royal family, watching from the shadows as they lived in luxury, while she remained a nobody. But then, fate gave her a chance. On the night the great kingdom of Oyo fell, in the midst of chaos and bloodshed, she had stumbled upon something, or rather, someone, a baby girl, hidden among the roots of the sacred baobab tree, wrapped in silk too fine for an ordinary child. Mama Folake had recognized the birthmark on the baby's wrist, the mark of royal blood. She had heard whispers before that the queen had given birth to a daughter, an heir, one who would grow to restore what had been lost. Mama Folake had made a decision that night. If the child was allowed to live, and fulfill her destiny, she would rise to power, and women like Folek would remain nothing more than servants. But if the girl was hidden away, raised as a nobody, her destiny would never come to pass. No one would ever know she was the lost princess. And so, she had taken the baby, brought her to Zamora, and pretended to be her guardian. For years, Mama Folake worked to break Ayo's spirit. She treated her cruelly, kept her weak, and made her believe she was worthless. She never allowed Ayo to learn too much, never let her speak to the village elders for too long, and always made sure she was too tired to dream of something bigger. But despite all her efforts, she could not erase the girl's true nature. There was something in Ayo's eyes, something strong and unshaken, something that Mama Folake feared. And as the years passed, a deep unease grew in her heart. She knew that one day, no matter how hard she tried to stop it, destiny would come knocking. And when that day arrived, all her lies would crumble, and the truth would set Ayo free. The village of Zamora had been suffering for months. Dry fields, empty wells, and restless animals. The people had tried everything. They prayed to the gods, made offerings at the shrine, and even held cleansing rituals, but nothing changed. Fear hung in the air like a dark cloud, and whispers of an ancient curse spread from house to house. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, an old woman arrived at the village gates. She walked with the aid of a wooden staff carved with strange symbols, her grey hair tied back with a cloth as blue as the deepest parts of the river. Her presence commanded attention, and though she was frail, her eyes held the power of someone who had seen many things beyond the world of the living. The villagers recognized her at once, Mama Aduni, the river priestess. She rarely left her sacred home by the great waters, only coming when the spirits sent her with a message. The elders rushed to greet her, bowing their heads in respect as she stepped forward. The people gathered in silence, waiting, knowing that whatever she had come to say would change everything. Mama Aduni took a deep breath, lifting her gaze to the sky, before speaking in a voice that carried across the village. "The gods have spoken," she said. "A great secret has been hidden among you. The true daughter of the gods walks in this village, unaware of who she really is. Her time of awakening is near. If she does not rise to fulfill her destiny, the land will remain cursed, and all of Zamora will fall into ruin." Gasps filled the air, and the crowd broke into murmurs. A daughter of the gods, hidden among them. Who could it be? Some people looked at their neighbors with suspicion, while others exchanged nervous glances. But Mama Aduni raised her staff, silencing them. "Do not seek her with your eyes," she warned. "The truth will reveal itself when the time is right." Mama Folek, who had been standing at the back of the crowd, felt her heart slam against her ribs. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her wrapper as a cold wave of fear washed over her. She knew exactly who the priestess was speaking about. It was Ayo. The girl's time was coming, just as she had always feared. And if the truth was revealed, everything Mama Folake had worked for would be lost forever. Not long after the river priestess's warning, Ayo began having strange dreams. They came to her in the quiet of the night, pulling her into a world that felt both familiar and unknown. In these dreams, she saw flashes of a golden palace, its tall pillars shining in the sunlight. She walked through halls decorated with rich tapestries, heard the distant laughter of people she had never met, and felt the warmth of a place that felt like home, even though she had never been there before. Then, the dream would shift. The palace would grow dark, its golden walls covered in vines and dust, as if time had forgotten it. A heavy silence would fill the air, broken only by a whispering voice calling her name. "Ayo, come home." The voice was soft yet powerful, full of love and sadness. It sent chills down her spine, yet it also made her heart ache. Who was calling her? Why did the palace feel so real? Each night, the dreams grew clearer. She began seeing more. Soldiers in shining armor, a queen wearing a crown, her eyes filled with sorrow. A great battle, flames rising into the sky, and then a baby, wrapped in silk, placed beneath the roots of a mighty baobab tree. The moment she reached out to touch the child, Ayo would wake up, her body covered in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to ignore the dreams at first, but they refused to fade. Even during the day, images of the Golden Palace haunted her thoughts. She felt an unexplainable pull, as if something inside her was waking up. She had always felt different, always felt like she did not truly belong. But now, Those feelings grew stronger. Mama Folake noticed the change. She watched Io closely, saw the faraway look in her eyes, and the way she seemed lost in thought. The moment she overheard Io whispering about the Golden Palace in her sleep, a deep fear gripped her heart. She had spent years keeping Io's true past buried, keeping her weak and small. But now, the girl's memories were coming back. And if Io discovered who she truly was, Mama Folake knew there would be no way to stop what was coming. One hot afternoon, Io walked down to the river with a bundle of clothes balanced on her head. The sun was high, and the water shimmered under its golden light. She knelt by the riverbank, dipping the first cloth into the cool stream. As she scrubbed, she paused for a moment, stretching her fingers. That was when she saw it. On the inside of her wrist, a strange glow pulsed beneath her skin. Io frowned, rubbing at it, thinking it was just the sunlight playing tricks on her. But the glow did not fade. Instead, it grew brighter, revealing the shape of an intricate symbol, one she had never noticed before. It was not an ordinary birthmark. It almost looked like a royal crest. Io's heart began to race. She stared at the mark, her mind spinning with confusion. What did this mean? Had it always been there? Before she could make sense of it, a gasp came from behind her. An elder woman, bent with age but sharp-eyed, had been gathering herbs nearby. She stepped closer, peering at Io's wrist with wide eyes. "Child," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Where did you get that mark?" Io hesitated. I don't know," she admitted, pulling her hand back. "I've never noticed it before." The old woman's lips parted in shock. She lifted a shaking finger, pointing at the mark. "That," she said, "is the crest of the lost royal bloodline. The heir to the fallen kingdom of Oyo bore that very mark." Io felt her breath catch in her throat. The words hit her like a rushing wave. The kingdom of Oyo, the lost heir. Could the dreams she had been seeing be real? Could she truly be? A sharp rustling in the bushes interrupted the moment. Unseen by either of them, Mama Folake had been nearby, gathering firewood. She had heard everything, her hands clenched around the sticks she carried, her nails digging into the rough bark. A chill of dread ran through her. The truth was slipping through her fingers. If this old woman spread what she had seen, it would not be long before the entire village knew. And if they found out Io's real identity, Mama Folake's years of lies and control would crumble. She had to act before it was too late. The moment Mama Folake heard the elder woman's words by the river, she knew she had no time to waste. The truth was slipping out, and soon Io would start asking questions that would lead her straight to her real identity. If that happened, everything Mama Folake had built, every lie she had told, would crumble. She had spent years making sure Io remained powerless, and she would not let all that effort go to waste now. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mama Folake made her move. While Io was preparing dinner, she suddenly clutched her chest and groaned in pain. "Io!" she gasped. "I feel faint. Help me to my room." Io, always kind despite her stepmother's cruelty, rushed to her side, leading her into a small, dark room at the back of the house. The moment Io stepped inside, Mama Folake shoved her forward and slammed the door shut. Before Io could react, she heard the heavy scrape of wood as a thick log was pushed against the door from the outside, locking her in. Io rushed to the door, banging her fists against it. "Mama Folake, what are you doing?" she cried. "Let me out." From the other side, Mama Folake's voice was calm but firm. "You are sick, Io," she said smoothly. "You have been cursed. It is best for you to stay inside until I can find a cure." Ayo's heart pounded. A curse. She was not sick. She had felt fine all day. Why was Mama Folake doing this? Panic rose in her chest as she pushed against the door, but it was no use. She was trapped. Outside, Mama Folake took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was the only way. If Io remained locked away, no one would see her birthmark, and the rumors would fade. But she knew that was not enough. Io was smart, and she would not stay silent forever. So, Mama Folake made a terrible decision. She walked to a small wooden chest in the corner of the room and opened it. Inside, wrapped in a piece of cloth, was a tiny clay bottle filled with a dark, bitter liquid, a poison made from the roots of the iru tree, quick and painless, leaving no trace. If Io never woke up, There would be no questions, no truth, no destiny. Mama Folake held the bottle tightly, staring at the locked door. Tomorrow, she would mix the poison into Ayo's food. By the time the village realized she was gone, it would be too late. She had kept the secret for 17 years. She would not let it escape now. That night, as the house grew silent, Kemi lay awake in her bed, unable to shake the uneasy feeling in her heart. She had heard whispers of her mother locking Ayo away, claiming she was sick. But Kemi knew Ayo was not sick. She had seen her just that morning, full of life. Something was not right. Curious, she crept out of her room and tiptoed toward her mother's door. Just as she was about to knock, she heard voices inside. She pressed her ear against the wooden frame and listened. She must not live to see another sunrise. Mama Folake's voice was low but firm. By morning, it will be done. Kemi's blood ran cold. She clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. Was her mother planning to kill Ayo? For years, Kemi had watched her mother treat Ayo unfairly. She had been raised to believe that Ayo was beneath her, just a mere orphan taken in out of pity. But despite it all, Kemi had always felt something deeper for Ayo. She was not just a servant. She was family. She was her sister. Kemi knew she had to do something. She waited until her mother fell asleep, then quietly took the key from the shelf and made her way to the locked room. Her hands trembled as she turned the key in the lock. The door creaked open, and Ayo, sitting in the corner with fear in her eyes, looked up in shock. "Kemi?" Ayo whispered. "What are you doing?" Kemi grabbed her hand, pulling her up. "No time to explain," she whispered back. "We have to go, now." Without another word, Ayo followed Kemi as they slipped out of the house and ran into the darkness. The cool night air brushed against Ayo's skin as she ran, her heart pounding with fear and confusion. Where could she go? Who could she turn to? Then she remembered. Mama Aduni, the river priestess, had spoken of her destiny before. Maybe she had answers. Breathless and exhausted, Ayo reached the river shrine, where Mama Aduni sat by the water, her eyes calm, as if she had been expecting her. "You have come, child," the priestess said softly. "It is time." Before Ayo could ask what she meant, Mama Aduni guided her to the center of the shrine, placing a bowl of clear water before her. She whispered ancient words, and the water began to glow. Ayo gasped as the reflection in the water shifted, showing her images from a past she did not remember. She saw a grand palace, far more beautiful than anything she had ever known. She saw a woman, strong, regal, with eyes like hers, wearing a golden crown. Queen Ayoka, her mother. The vision changed, showing betrayal. Guards storming the palace, swords drawn, chaos everywhere. She saw her mother holding a baby, her, whispering a final prayer before placing her beneath the sacred baobab tree. Then, another figure appeared in the vision. A younger Mama Folake, dressed as a palace maid, watching from the shadows. She crept forward, stole the baby, and disappeared into the night. The truth hit Ayo like a wave. She was not just an orphan. She was the lost princess of Oyo. Mama Folake had stolen her to keep her from her destiny. Tears filled Ayo's eyes as the vision faded. She looked up at Mama Aduni, her voice barely a whisper. "What do I do now?" The priestess smiled gently. "You must return and take back what is yours." Ayo felt a fire burning inside her as she walked back to the village. The truth had finally been revealed. She was not just an orphan, not just a servant in Mama Folake's house. She was the lost princess of Oyo. For years she had lived in darkness, never knowing who she truly was. But now she could no longer be kept in the shadows. It was time for the truth to come to light. As she stepped into the village square, people turned to look at her. Whispers spread quickly. Ayo had escaped. She was supposed to be locked away, sick, yet here she stood, stronger than ever. The village elders, sensing something important was about to happen, gathered in the center, their wise eyes watching closely. Then, Mama Folake appeared, her face twisted with shock when she saw Ayo standing tall, alive, and unharmed. For the first time in her life, fear flickered in her eyes, but she quickly masked it, stepping forward with a forced smile. "Ayo, my child," she said sweetly, her voice laced with fake concern. "Where have you been? I was so worried about you." Ayo did not flinch. She did not cower like she used to. She lifted her chin and looked Mama Folake straight in the eyes. "No more lies," she said firmly. "I know the truth." The crowd gasped, confused. Mama Folake's smile faltered, but she forced out a nervous laugh. "What truth, my dear? You are ill. You are confused." "I am not confused," Ayo cut her off. "I know who I am. I am the daughter of Queen Ayoka. I am the lost princess of Oyo." A heavy silence fell over the village. The people looked at one another, stunned. Some gasped in disbelief, others murmured in shock. The elders exchanged knowing glances, as if a long-buried secret had finally been unearthed. Mama Folake's face paled, but she quickly recovered, shaking her head. "What nonsense are you speaking, girl? You are nothing but an orphan I took in out of kindness." Before Ayo could reply, another voice rang out. "She is telling the truth." All eyes turned to Kemi, who stepped forward, her face filled with determination. "I heard everything," she said. "Mama stole Ayo as a baby. She knew the truth all along." The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. The elders turned to Mama Folake, their expressions now filled with suspicion. "Is this true?" one of them asked. Mama Folake's hands shook. No, they are lying. This is a trick," she shouted desperately. But then, the elder woman from the river stepped forward. "I saw the mark on her wrist," she said. "It is the royal crest. She is the rightful heir." The elders nodded. The truth was undeniable now. Mama Folake had no more lies to hide behind. Her body trembled as she realized the power she had clung to for years was slipping through her fingers. Ayo took a deep breath and spoke one last time, her voice clear and strong. "The gods have revealed the truth. Justice must be served." The entire village watched, waiting for the elders' decision. Mama Folake knew she was trapped, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly powerless. Mama Folake's breath came in short gasps as she glanced around wildly. The villagers were closing in, their eyes filled with anger and betrayal. She had spent years controlling them with lies, but now everything was falling apart. She could not let this be the end. She had to escape. Without another word, she turned and bolted, pushing past the crowd and running as fast as her legs could carry her. She did not know where she was going. All she knew was that she needed to get away. But just as she reached the edge of the village, a deep rumble filled the air. The ground beneath her trembled. The sky, which had been clear moments ago, darkened as thick clouds rolled in. A strong wind howled through the trees, sending dust and leaves swirling in all directions. Then, a blinding flash of lightning streaked across the sky, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. The villagers gasped, looking up in fear. The gods were watching. The gods were angry. Mama Folake stumbled, shielding her face from the sudden storm. She knew this was no ordinary weather. This was a warning, a punishment. But she refused to believe it. "No," she muttered, shaking her head. "This is just a coincidence. I control my fate," but fate had other plans. A second bolt of lightning struck the ancient baobab tree, the very tree where she had stolen Ayo as a baby. The force of it split the great tree in half, its mighty trunk groaning as it cracked open. From the center of the broken tree, something glowed, a golden object, long hidden from sight. The villagers stepped forward in awe as the dust settled, revealing a magnificent golden scepter, its surface shining with intricate carvings of the royal crest of Oyo. The people gasped in recognition. "The lost scepter," an elder whispered. "The gods have returned it to us." Mama Folake's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground, her body trembling. She could not run anymore. She could not lie anymore. The gods had exposed her crime in the most undeniable way. The very tree that had hidden her secret had now revealed the truth. Tears filled her eyes as she realized there was no escape from justice. The power she had stolen was never meant to be hers, and now it was time to face the consequences. The storm had passed, but the village remained silent. All eyes were on Mama Folake, who sat on the ground, defeated. The once powerful woman, who had controlled Ayo's life with lies and cruelty, was now powerless. Her face was pale, her hands shaking, as she stared at the golden scepter lying near the broken baobab tree. She knew there was no way to escape now. The village elders stepped forward, their expressions stern. One of them, the eldest and wisest, spoke first. "Mama Folake," he said, his voice steady, "for years you have deceived us. You stole a child of royal blood, hid the truth, and mistreated her. You have betrayed not only Ayo, but the gods and the people of this village." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others shook their heads in disbelief. How could someone they had trusted for so long be capable of such evil? Mama Folake opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to beg for mercy, but no words came out. What excuse could she give? The truth had been revealed, and the gods had already passed their judgment. The elder raised his staff. "You are no longer welcome here. You will leave this village at once. You will take nothing with you. No wealth, no land, no power. From this day forward, you are an outcast." A heavy silence followed his words. The villagers looked at Mama Folake, waiting for her reaction. She let out a shaky breath, tears filling her eyes. She had spent her whole life chasing power, only to end up with nothing. Slowly, she lowered her head in shame. She knew she had no choice but to accept her fate. Then, Kemi stepped forward. Unlike her mother, she did not look angry or afraid. She looked sad. "Mother," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I loved you, but I cannot follow you anymore." Mama Folake looked up at her daughter, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Kemi, please, I did it for us." Kemi shook her head. "Number, you did it for yourself." Her eyes turned to Ayo, the sister she had ignored for so long. "Ayo is my true family. I choose to stand with her." Tears ran down Mama Folake's cheeks as she realized she had lost everything, even her own daughter. She looked at Kemi one last time, then at Ayo, who stood strong, her rightful place now restored. With heavy steps, Mama Folake turned and began walking toward the wilderness, alone. The villagers watched as she disappeared into the distance, knowing they would never see her again. Justice had been served. The village could now begin to heal, and Ayo, at last, was free. With Mama Folake gone and the truth of Ayo's royal bloodline laid bare, the village of Zamora began to change. The elders, who had once been wary of Ayo and her mysterious past, now saw her for who she truly was, the rightful heir to the fallen kingdom of Oyo. They gathered in the village square, surrounding Ayo with respect and admiration. The eldest elder, with his wise, weathered face, stepped forward and raised his hands to the sky. "Ayo," he said, his voice filled with reverence, "you are the daughter of the gods, the true heir of Oyo. With our blessing, you shall reclaim your throne and restore what was lost." The villagers bowed their heads in unison, offering their support and loyalty. Ayo felt a rush of emotions, grief for the kingdom her mother had lost, gratitude for the elders' trust, and a deep sense of responsibility for her people. She had once been a simple orphan, living in the shadow of a cruel stepmother, but now she stood before them as a queen, ready to fulfill the destiny that had been hidden from her for so long. The next day, Ayo stood before the baobab tree, where her journey had begun so many years ago. The tree, which had once been a symbol of betrayal, now stood strong and proud, its branches reaching for the sky as if in support of Ayo's rise. She held the golden scepter, the symbol of her kingdom, in her hand, and as the sun rose, its light bathed the village in warmth and hope. As she walked through the village, the people cheered, and a sense of joy filled the air. It was as if the land itself had come alive again. The crops, which had once withered and died, began to bloom. The river, which had run dry for so long, started to flow once more, its waters clear and abundant. The animals, which had once grown restless and fearful, returned to their peaceful ways. For the first time in many years, the village felt at peace. Ayo's return to the throne had not only restored her rightful place, but had also brought blessings to the land. The people rejoiced, knowing that under her rule, the kingdom of Oyo would rise again. Ayo stood at the top of the hill, looking out over the village that had once been her home. She could see the future now, a future where the lost kingdom was restored, where peace and prosperity would reign once more. She had a long journey ahead, but she was no longer afraid. Her destiny was hers to fulfill, and with the support of her people, she would rebuild the kingdom her mother had lost and bring honor to the royal bloodline once again. As the sun set casting a golden glow over the land. Ayo knew that the darkness was finally over. The gods had smiled upon her, and the people of Zamora had found hope once again. The lost kingdom of Oyo would rise from the ashes, and under Queen Ayo's rule, it would flourish like never before. As Ayo stood at the edge of the village, ready to leave for the great palace and begin her journey to restore her kingdom, there was one final matter she needed to resolve. Kemi, though she had chosen to stand by Ayo, was still filled with sorrow. She had been raised in the shadow of Mama Folak's cruelty and deceit, and she had been torn between her loyalty to her mother and her newfound love for her sister. Ayo turned to Kemi, her heart full of understanding. She knew how difficult it must have been for her. Despite everything, Kemi was still her sister, and Ayo understood that forgiveness was the only way forward. With a gentle smile, she reached out and pulled Kemi into a warm embrace. "Kemi, you are my sister," Ayo said softly, her voice filled with kindness. "You didn't know the truth, and you didn't choose the life Mama gave you. But now, we have a chance to start fresh, together." Kemi's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Ayo back. "I am so sorry, Ayo," she whispered. "I was blind, but I never wanted to hurt you. Please forgive me." Ayo held her close, reassuring her. "There is nothing to forgive. The past is behind us. What matters is now. You are with me, and that is all that matters." Kemi nodded, wiping away her tears. She finally understood the power of love and forgiveness. In that moment, Ayo's kindness had healed the wounds of betrayal, showing Kemi that it was possible to move forward with an open heart. As the two sisters stood there, a new bond was formed, one that was stronger than any bloodline or past mistake. Ayo had proven that kindness, not anger, would guide her reign as queen. She had chosen to heal, not to seek revenge, and in doing so, she had shown that the power of love could overcome even the deepest betrayals. With a final look at her sister, Ayo turned and walked toward her new life, ready to take her place as the rightful queen of Oyo. The people who had once feared her now saw her as their leader, and the future looked bright. The kingdom would be rebuilt, and Ayo would reign with fairness, wisdom, and compassion. As the scene shifted, the camera showed Mama Folaka in the distance, walking alone into the wilderness. Her once proud figure was now hunched and broken. She had lost everything: the power, the wealth, and the love of her daughter. The weight of her sins weighed heavily on her, and she wandered aimlessly, haunted by the choices she had made. Far from the village, in the quiet of the wilderness, Mama Folake was left with nothing but her regrets. She had tried to steal a future that was not hers, but in the end, she had been left with only the echoes of her past mistakes. The gods had judged her, and she was now alone, with nothing but the consequences of her actions to guide her. Meanwhile, Ayo stood proudly, wearing the crown of her ancestors. She had found peace, redemption, and the strength to forgive. The last image of the story showed her, not as a frightened orphan, but as a powerful queen, her head held high, ready to lead her people into a bright future. And as the scene faded, it was clear kindness had triumphed over betrayal, and Ayo's reign would be one of justice, love, and hope for all.